Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Smithson. I'm a Sapphire Ambassador with Plexus, and we are going to be going over chapters 7 and 8 of the book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions by John Maxwell. Chapters 7 and 8 are really good chapters. I don't know if they were assigned to me on purpose, but I needed to read them. So I'm really thankful to Elizabeth or whoever assigned these because I needed to read them. And they are about dealing with conflict. So the first chapter is about dealing with conflict with people that maybe you are leading. And then the second chapter is dealing with conflict maybe of people that are leading you. So we're going to dive deep into both of them. I took a lot more time with dealing with people that are hard to lead, because to me, that's something that we are more likely going to face. Thankfully, in our team culture, we have really great leadership. I feel like we all want to help each other. We're not necessarily, hopefully, going to run into people that are not leading us well, but we're going to go through that anyway, just in case it does happen. But we're going to spend a lot of time on chapter 7, which is resolving conflict and leading challenging people. So if you are newer to this business or you haven't had conflict yet, just know that it's probably going to happen because we are mostly women here, which I don't want to gender stereotype because men have conflict too, but just we're women and we tend to, when we get in large groups of women, there tends to be some conflict sometimes. So eventually there might be conflict. And also this is a people business and we're all different. We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that bother us. We all have our quirks. So there's going to be times, whether it's a big conflict or a little conflict, that you're going to have to resolve some conflict. So these are great chapters. And I would just lock this in your brain so that when you have stuff come up, you can refer back to these chapters and read them again. Because maybe right now, for those of you that haven't had conflict, you're going to say, well, I don't really have anything to relate this to because it hasn't happened yet. But once it does, these will be great to relate back to, and you can get some more advice when you are going through it. So first of all, this chapter is only going to really address working with people that actually want to be worked with. So if you're having conflict with people and they don't really want to be led or don't want to be coached, that's kind of on them. There might not be a ton of resolution. There's stuff that you can do for sure, but it's really going to be effective for the people that want to be coached, want to learn from you, and want to resolve the conflict too. But some people will not want to be a productive part of a team. And I want you to know, because I needed to read this a few times, that doesn't make you a bad leader. If somebody is not coachable, if somebody doesn't want to resolve conflict, if somebody is going rogue and doing their own thing and not listening to you and your guidance, that does not make you a bad leader. It means maybe you have to have some conversations and some tough conversations, but it doesn't fall on your shoulders. And I want you to remember that as well. Some people will just never be coachable, but that doesn't mean we just give up on them, right? So we need to ask a couple of questions. We want to ask, can they change? And we want to ask, will they change? Asking, can they change, goes back to their ability. Do they have the ability to change? Most people have the ability to change. You can teach people basic skills, the skill set that they need to be successful in this business or to be coachable, but will they change is usually the larger issue, and that goes back to their attitude. And to me, that's a harder thing to change because people can learn skills, but changing their attitude falls more on them, right? So if you want people to change, though, both of those answers have to be yes. Unfortunately and fortunately, I would say mostly fortunately, in this business, we are not people's boss though, right? So we're not going to have a conversation with people. And if they are not changing, say, well, you're not part of the team anymore, right? This is a volunteer army. The people that want to be here are going to be here. And if they are not being coachable, but they still want to be here, you still have to learn to work with them. So we want to make sure that when things do arise, that we meet with them as soon as we can and meet with them privately. There's nothing worse than saying something in front of a bunch of people that's going to make them feel demoralized. You want to nip it in the bud right away. Don't let it drag on for a long, long time, and make sure that you're really kind, calm, and have specific examples of things that need to change. Don't just go in willy-nilly, hot-headed, in front of a bunch of people, making them feel bad, because that's not going to help you connect. Because if you want to actually resolve the conflict, you want to be connecting with that person, making them feel validated for the things that they do right, making them feel validated that you still care about them, but they still need to grow, right? But we don't want to make them feel like they're not an important part of the team. Okay. Let's see, I have a couple things highlighted, so I'm sorry, I'm going to kind of go through the book and go through my notes at the same time. Okay, so the next part I wanted to mention, next thing I wanted to mention is that having these hard conversations and telling people where they need to grow is one of the hardest parts about leadership for me. And I don't know about if that's true for all of you guys, but for me, it's really hard to have the hard conversations and tell people where they need to grow. But it's so important. And we need to make sure that when we're thinking about like, oh, I don't really want to have this hard conversation, are we thinking about our comfort, or are we thinking about the good of the whole team? Because if we are avoiding discussing this and getting this resolved because we're not comfortable, that's a poor leadership choice on our end. We need to do it anyway, because it's for the good of the team that everybody gets along, right? So I wanted to mention that, and I need to mention that for myself too. But then on page 178, my favorite quote, I highlighted it and starred it, is that sometimes the greatest value a leader can add to other people comes through telling them the truth, showing them where they can grow, and helping them change. So we have to do that. We have to have the hard conversations, and then it's up to them to accept the feedback, be willing to grow and change. We will guide them in their journey, but some of that falls on them as well. So next, we're going to talk about a few other things. So how to raise the bar when people aren't performing. A lot of this, you guys, comes down to what example are we setting as leaders? Am I setting a good example? Am I leading myself successfully and setting the bar high for myself first? Am I taking action every single day? Am I doing the things that I'm expecting of other people? If my work is up to the bar that I have set for other people, then I can ask them, do you think you're reaching your maximum potential? Would you like to do better? Do you know how to reach your maximum potential, and can I help you? So really, we can't expect other people to do what we're not doing. So we first have to look at ourselves, always reflect on yourself, but then you can ask them the coaching questions. Brittany Howard also has some amazing coaching questions. So if you're interested in those, I think she has them uploaded in Pink Power, but some things that you can ask people to reflect on the month before, reflect on kind of what their activity has been, to help them reach their max potential. How do we motivate an unmotivated person? Same thing. We can't change people. We only can expect them to change themselves, but are we motivated? Are we showing that we're motivated and excited? Because people are only going to do what they see us do. We want to make sure that we're validating people for the things that they're doing right, like always, rewarding them for their hard work for sure, and making sure that we're leading ourselves well in this area too. I'm not going to go through every single bullet point, guys, because there's a lot of stuff. So I highlighted my favorite parts, and then I'll let you guys kind of chime in on some of the stuff that I didn't mention. I wanted to talk about helping people move past mistakes, because sometimes people are going to make mistakes, or they're going to feel like they did something wrong, and maybe they will do something wrong. We all make mistakes, right? Who can sit here and raise their hand and say they've never made a mistake? None of us. We've all made mistakes, but we can't stay there. We need to make sure that we're focusing on the lesson rather than focusing on the loss. I loved that comparison that he talked about. So don't ruminate on the things that went wrong. You can think about it. He says, celebrate or grieve for 24 hours. So whether something's going really well or something's going really wrong, you're going to give yourself 24 hours to grieve or 24 hours to celebrate, and then you move on. Because even if something's going well, if we celebrate for longer than 24 hours, we could get stuck there because we think we're awesome. But if we then also make a mistake and we stay there for too long, we're going to get stuck in this hole, keep digging ourselves deeper in a hole and not getting out. So you're going to make a mistake. give yourself 24 hours and then move on. He gave 2 really great other book examples that he's written, Failing Forward and Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn. So if that's something that you need help with, those are other good books that he's written to help you with that. The next one is, at what point do you turn your energy away from the low performers and focus on those who want to grow? This can be hard because most of us just want everybody to get better, right? And to succeed and to grow and to be successful. So we guide people, we give them the tools, we give them the resources, we do as much as we can to help them succeed, but we want to make sure that we're not dragging people along either. So we want to focus on the people that want to grow, focus on the people that want to learn, focus on the people that want to be better. If there are people that are negative or not producing very much or not showing up to things, then maybe those aren't the people that you focus your time on. You want to focus 80% of your time on the top 20% of your business. And the rest of your time, you're not going to leave people forever, but sometimes you have to let them sit and focus on the people that are really working hard in order for yourself to be successful and for other reasons. He also says there's a cost to keeping negative or unproductive people. So if you have all these people that aren't doing anything and you're pouring and pouring and pouring all your soul into them, that's a lot for you. Isn't it a lot easier and more fun to run with the runners rather than pouring into the people that are negative? He says there are lifters and leaners. So I liked this a lot. Not only do you want to look at the people that you're leading and decide, like, are these lifters or leaners, right? But you also want to look at yourself and say, am I being a lifter or am I being a leaner? And we want to be lifters all the time, and we want to work with the people that are lifters too. And if we're putting too much time in our leaners, then that's something to reevaluate. Okay. Yeah. Invest your time in the people that want to grow. That just comes down to that. The next part, inspiring your team that this isn't just another job. This isn't just another paycheck. Same sort of thing. You've got to exude your passion. You've got to be excited because your passion is contagious for your team. If you're just la-di-da, then they're going to be la-di-da and think, oh, it's just another paycheck, or they'll start to fizzle out. So if you want people to be excited, you've got to be excited and inspired too. I wrote this in my notes and then highlighted it when I read my notes again. If you aren't fired up, you are a big part of the problem. The first person you must address is yourself. So if you're not growing and if you're not fired up and if you're not excited, your team's not going to be either. So make sure that you're always reflecting on how you are as a leader, not just expecting other people to rise to the occasion. Okay. What if you're leading people who are better leaders or are more knowledgeable? First of all, congratulations, that's amazing. But if that intimidates you, then make sure that you are finding common ground with them, validate the things that they do well, tell them the things that you see in them that maybe you don't see in yourself, and call that out in them. That's not something to necessarily be intimidated by. This is something to celebrate because we all are going to have our own strengths, and my strengths may not be your strengths, may not be your strengths or your strengths. And that's what makes us a good team. So I would just say celebrate that you have somebody that's more knowledgeable than you on your team. But if that does intimidate you, just make sure that you let them be a part of the decision making. Give them tasks that are to their strengths and just watch them soar, because when they win, you're going to win too. How long do you push someone's potential when they are not reaching it? Well, this is kind of a hard one too, because sometimes we see people that just kind of like start to peter out, because it's human nature to want to find comfort and a place to plateau for a little while. But again, we cannot stay there. But people end up staying there because these are some examples he gave. Choosing to go on a vacation is easier than choosing to go to a conference and bettering yourself. So sometimes people choose the easier path. They'll choose watching a lot of TV shows and Netflix over taking an hour and doing their IPA. Or they'll just quit because this is more difficult than they thought. This is a job. It's not just scrolling social media. Sometimes people don't want to put in the time or pay the price or put in the effort to be successful. or they let their problems or lack of belief in themselves defeat them. So we want to see when people are starting to peter out, look at those people, learn about them, talk to them, and see what it is that's holding them back, and see if you can help them out of that hole, if they're willing to be coached through it, right? So I also highlighted, so we have 197. Hold on, let me see what my note goes to. I have lots of notes. These were good chapters. Okay. This is a good part. Okay. We always need to make sure that we are not the problem before we look to where the problem is. After that, we realize that all of these choices, right? They're not putting in the effort. They're deciding to watch TV instead of do their IPA. Those are their choices, not ours. We can't push people to reach their potential. We can choose to open the door for them, but they must walk through it. If they choose not to, you're better off spending your time on someone who is hungry and actively wants to grow. So always, always work with your people that want to be helped. Okay, I have taken a lot of time, so I'm going to zoom through some of my other notes and get through the other parts I think are really important. Let's just get to chapter 8 so that we can hear what other people have to say about these chapters too. So this one is about succeeding and working under poor leadership. So if your leader is difficult to work with, which, like I said in the beginning of this call, we have a wonderful team culture, and I doubt that we'll have to deal with this a lot, but I still think it's worth it to address. But before you blame your leader, look at yourself first, right? Whether we're mad at somebody that's on our team or mad at somebody that's helping us out, always look at yourself first. Consider that you could be the problem. Look at your activity, look at your attitude, self-reflect first before you get too upset with what somebody else is not doing for you or with you. If you have evidence to support your opinion that your leader is a poor leader, make sure that you're very specific about examples again and writing down what those specific examples are. Don't be vague about it. Again, make sure to talk to them privately. This isn't something that you go to your teammates and you talk badly about your leader because you're frustrated. That is bad integrity. That is not okay. That is drama. We don't have time for drama here. It's not worth it. This isn't high school. If you have a problem with somebody and you have examples and you have self-reflected first, then you need to go to that person kindly and talk to them about it. Again, privately. Yeah. Be collaborative, outline your complaint, be kind. Always, always be kind. And that is what he says the next part too. If you're talking to somebody that you're upset with, or if your leader doesn't like you for some reason, which again, probably won't happen where we are, but make sure that you are looking for common ground with people, always looking for something that you have in common rather than looking for the things that are opposite of you. Be consistently pleasant, be a problem solver, and go the extra mile. So I think just not focusing on the bad, focus on the good things and take the high road. Always take the high road. It's always better to take the high road than to be making low blows and being mean to people. It's just not worth it. Okay. The last point that I want to make, there's so much in chapter 8, but I was reading through it and I just kept thinking over and over and over again, there are so many people in our company that don't have leadership like we do on our team. They don't have anybody at all that is training them, coaching them, guiding them, and they're still successful. So don't worry so much about what people are doing above and below you. I mean, if you have a leader, definitely listen to their guidance. They know what they're doing, right? But if you are finding that you're frustrated with the leadership that you're having, and again, thankfully we're on a team that's not an issue, but ultimately your success is up to you, because there are people that go through this whole business without any sort of someone to lean on, and they still do really, really well. So control the things that you can control, and you can still be successful even without leadership. So the last thing I want to say is the last sentence of these two chapters on page 228. He says, life's greatest rewards come from your inner self, from the choices you make, from how you decide to live under whatever circumstances you find yourself in. So whether you're having conflict above or below, or you feel like you can't be successful because your leader is not where you want them to be, which hopefully is not happening anyway, you can still be successful because your success is up to you. So with that being said, I am going to open up the floor now to all of you and what you had to say about these chapters.
Okay, I'll go. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. I like the part. Oh, now I lost the page. Son of a gun. Here we go. It's the part where he says many people get emotionally stuck when they make a mistake or suffer a loss. They often become overwhelmed by regret. That's a problem because, as writer Catherine Mansfield observed, regret is an appalling waste of energy. You can't build on it. It's only good for wallowing in. If regret takes hold for too long, it can turn into guilt, resentment, and self-pity. And I was like, man, those words, holy smokes. And it's so easy to get stuck in the, oh man, I wish I'd done that different. I wish I'd done that different. And we beat the crapola out of ourselves and it doesn't do any good. And all it does is it brings us down and it shows our leaders that you don't have that positive self-worth. You know, we can turn that around and go, you know what? I made a bad choice. I don't like what happened, but this is how I'm moving forward. And that's one of the things through some of the leadership stuff is not just complaining about something, but being solution oriented. It doesn't do any good to complain about something if you're not going to do something about it. So there's times where you can go to your upline and just say, hey, I need to vent this, but I'm not looking for a solution. I just need to get this out and then it can be done. Or go to your leader and say, I need help with this. Can you help me find a solution to this? These are some things that I thought of. Can you help me with this? And that will allow you the ability to grow in your relationship and your trust with that other person, with yourself, with your Lord, because he doesn't make us to beat ourselves up, and to emulate that, or to show that activity to your downline. So I really like that part.
I love that part too. And I think that's just really good advice in general with communication. If you are going to talk to somebody and like you have a complaint, like you just said, Jackie, say, I just need to vent, or please help me with solutions, because that will help your communication go so much smoother, so much smoother. I'm learning to do that with my husband too. You don't need to fix this. I just need to talk about it.
So, Lauren, you always do such a good job and you look really pretty too. You're so pretty presenting. Anyway, one of the things that I wanted to mention was when it talked about conflict with other people, addressing it right away is really important. And it's something that I need to work on, because sometimes I'm thinking of somebody in particular, not on this team. It has something to do with non-plexus. And because she was going through a rough situation, I didn't want to confront her on something. But it seems like in hindsight, there's a lot of times she's having a rough situation. So now it's gone on way past the time for me to be able to actually address the couple of things that I should have addressed a long time ago. So there's addressing it immediately is so important. Because we can always do it in a kind way, no matter what somebody's going through. We're supposed to address the person first anyway, right? So don't address the issue first, address the person first, because you never know what they're going through. And then the other thing that I was thinking was we live in such a society where we text a lot and we're on our phones a lot. conflict resolution should never be done over a text message or even a voicemail. It should always be done with, I can't say in person, but at least over the phone, right? It should always be done with actually connecting with the person, because you can't hear tone, you can't hear inflection in a text message, and it's always going to get construed the wrong way. Always. It just always will. So I don't know. Those are just some life lessons that I've learned along the way.
Such great points. I also have trouble addressing things right away. I just don't like conflict in general. And so what happens is it builds and builds and builds, and then it spills over. And that is not helpful for anybody. It's going to make you more upset when you're in the conversation, and it's just not going to go well. And you're right. I think phone calls are better too. But for some people, I am learning to love the phone, but it's not always easy, and it's easier to hide behind a screen. So it definitely is learning to grow out of that and actually have conversations with people, especially when it comes to conflict. Anybody else have anything?
I'll say something real quick. Sorry, my family just walked in, so I had to greet them for a minute. But yeah, so I love the part about the self-reflection. I guess I always kind of lean towards that. So when there is conflict, look at yourself first to see if you're interpreting it wrong, to see like if it's something you're doing before presenting, with the conflict to the person or to the leader. So I really appreciated that part of the chapter where it's more introspective and looking at yourself first. And then it goes so well with our company and with our culture that we have. Even in the beginning of the book, it's like we're asking questions to be more like servant leadership to serve others. But then when it comes to the conflict or the problem, we look inward first. We don't push the blame on other people. So I think it just fits the culture that what we do here too. If that makes sense. I kind of rambled. I had a really clear thought, and then my son's like, I'm leaving. And so then I had to go give him a hug goodbye. And like, so it sounded much better like 5 minutes ago.
I thought it sounded great. I thought you made a really great point. I think it's always good to self-reflect. As I was reading through, I was like, really, this is just conflict in any direction. We want to self-reflect first and always assume the best of people instead of assuming the worst. Give them the benefit of the doubt and look at ourselves first. Yeah. We can only control ourselves, right? We can't control what anybody else is doing. We can't control how other people act. We just control how we react. So yeah, important life lessons.
Oh, sorry, I didn't change my name on here. So in chapter 8, talking about being successful with poor leadership. And I say poor leadership because I don't think that there is anyone on this call or in our leadership and Rock Your Purpose that is a bad leader, poor leader. And so, but what you have heard, or we've heard, that those of us that have been around a little longer, is you'll hear from other Plexus people, like, I don't have an upline that's working. I don't have a working upline. My upline doesn't do anything. And they want to blame that they don't have a working upline on why they're not successful. And that's just not true, because we have all the tools and resource and support, and we have up the line to go should we ever be in a position where we did need more support or help. And so it's really in Plexus, especially, like, in the hospital, we're tied by how high our leader, our manager will push, right? Like, we can only, as staff therapists, can only do what we can do to push our manager to go to bat for us, so to speak, unless we went to some pretty drastic measures, which it's never in any department I've worked on. It's not something we've ever done. But in Plexus, because we don't answer to a boss, we really do answer to ourselves, that our success in this business really, really does determine, like it really is dependent on us. And so, yes, there are times where our leader might have something going on. And so they have life happening, some pretty horrible life things happening. When my dad was in the hospital and we were dealing with his funeral and all of that, like I was not around, and not one person was like, wow, that Elizabeth is just out to lunch over there. They knew what to do. They knew where to go for help. They did their thing. They did their business. And it was a huge month. Like it was the iPad month, and people were out to get their iPads. And that's exactly what I wanted them to do. And I had a really, this is terrible. I had a really grave conversation with my son. I said, I don't even know how we got on it. And I said, well, if I die, you have to make sure you take over the cooking, because daddy won't know how to cook healthy all the time. And so you're going to have to take over the cooking. And he's like, okay. And I said, and my Plexus team better get my team to Diamond over there. So y'all know you better take us to Diamond if I die and you have the skills to do it. So that was an aside, but I really like how he talks about that, and that it's really up to us to lead and to seek out help and resource and train ourselves and make the videos. Oh, you know what? There's no video on X, Y, and Z. Okay, y'all, then go make the video. You're a leader, go make the video. Because if you're wanting more training on it and you're seeking that out, picking up a John Maxwell book, then go make a video, because somebody else will benefit from it too. And I want to say along those lines, we're giving like little snippets, right? Like we're having this, 50-minute discussion. You could have a 50-minute discussion on every 3 pages of this book. And so if something is really standing out to you and you don't feel that we covered it as much in book club or something, go make a video. Book club doesn't have to be just this discussion on Thursday. If you're like, hey, that stood out to me, we didn't talk about it, or it stood out to me in conversation and I dug into it more through X, Y, and Z, then go make a video. Train all of us, because that's really going to add a lot of value to the team. So anyway, that's my 2 cents for today. Surprised I had that much in me.
You always have good stuff to say. Thank you.
I'll say something. So I think it was chapter 8. I listened to the audiobook, so I don't really keep pages of where he's saying everything. But it's still really good information, and I still get the gist of it. So he was talking about toxic environment and not to let it get you down. And if you're like stuck there, then just be the light and be the positivity, whether it's above you or beside you or below you. Just continue to feed into those other people. And I think that when I was first listening to it, I didn't really see how that fit so much with Texas, just because everyone is super empowering and positive. But then I started thinking about people who have full-time jobs outside of this, or my husband, he's in the military, so it's not necessarily a super positive environment. So when he comes home, he's just sometimes just exhausted from people just being negative all the time and being around that constantly. And so to me, that's just like, okay, just be the positivity, try and get to know somebody, see what they're going through. And if they're just negative all the time, don't let it bring you down. So that way, whenever you get home and you have to do your IPA or you got to do it at lunch, try and separate the two, so that way you can stay positive and stay motivated.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a great point. And I wrote this in the chat, but I just want to say, like, the thing that I love about book club, but about Plexus in general, is that we can make this go through our whole life. This is not just like us being better Plexus leaders and business owners. This is us being better sisters, wives, friends, all the things. And that's why reading these books is important, getting on the book clubs, getting on the team calls, because we're going to learn a lot about ourselves, and it's going to make you a better friend, sister, and everything. But then if it is your goal to grow, then becoming a better sister, friend, and all of that is going to help you grow too. It's like a win-win-win, right? So yeah, applying this to everything is super, super important.
I totally agree with that, because if you can't, handle your conflicts outside of Plexus, like it's really hard then to focus on your work and grow a business if you're, poorly managing everything else. So it's definitely important. And one of my big takeaways, kind of as I was reading it, was just how important it is to have just open communication anyways, and staying in touch with your people to kind of prevent some of that conflict too, because it happens. But the sooner you talk about things, and just the more you talk about things and getting on the phone and, hey, how are things going, and cover some of these underlying issues before it becomes like a real issue for all the people that, are struggling personally, and, then struggling with their products or struggling with not getting the goals they want, before it gets like, oh, I've been on the products and not noticing things for X amount of time. You can kind of work them through that, paint the picture and hopefully avoid some of that. And I've done a lot of work on my marriage on that too, not just waiting until it's a problem, but making sure you really try to stay in touch with your people, in touch with your husband, whoever it is in your life. So that way things can go smoother, and it's easier to be that light because you're not having this big, ugly, hairy problem. Then they do happen, but the easier it is to address it if you're being proactive.
Such a great point. Yes. Addressing it as you go so you don't explode. And helping people open up to you as they go too, like you mentioned, with their products or whatever, so that you can help them and they don't get to the point where they're like, I'm giving up because I didn't get supported enough or whatever. Anybody else have any big takeaways from these two chapters? Okay, well, it is the last day of the month too, so I will end the recording. Thank you all so much for your wisdom and for chiming in tonight, and we will see you next week. Bye.